If practicality is what you're after from your next new car, then there's a good chance you've probably considered an SUV, but the new Mercedes C-Class Estate is here to show that that doesn't need to be the case. It's got a family-focused interior, a practical-sized boot, and a range of economical engines that hope to tie together into one very appealing package. So today, we're going to find out just what it has in store. But before we dive in and see what the C-Class has to offer, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel, hitting that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video. This latest generation of C-Class definitely shows an evolution on the design of its predecessor. The grille is a little bit larger, the lights are a little bit slimmer, and around the back, those rear lights, well, they're sharper too. This car in silver is quite understated, and the smaller wheels do help the ride, though of course there are larger options should you want them. And remember that if the C-Class isn't for you, then there are plenty of other spacious estate versions available on Motors.co.uk today. The interior of the Mercedes C-Class is absolutely dominated by technology. So you've got this super wide touchscreen in the middle which controls, well, basically everything, including your satellite navigation, your media functions, and your heating and ventilation controls, which fortunately actually quite a bit clearer on this car than many of the C-Class's rivals that also use a touchscreen for the heating and ventilation. You've also got a second screen ahead of you which shows your maps and your speed and all of your key information, and you can tailor it to what you want to see. So a couple of different viewing modes, which is quite useful. In terms of build quality, a little bit hit and miss actually. This central section is quite plasticky. These edges here feel very flimsy, and up here on this section as well, a bit squeaky, so not exactly what you'd want. But the way it looks is excellent, and actually it's a nice evolution from previous generation C-Class. So having said that, the last generation C-Class had a really nice interior too. So apart from the tech, you're not going to feel too shortchanged by going for a used version. Now obviously, if you're considering a Mercedes C-Class, space is what you're after, and well, it's not too bad back here. The seat is in my position, I'm just under 6 foot, and you can see that I've got a decent amount of knee room, and most importantly I've got plenty of space for my feet too. Headroom is actually, well, it's pretty good actually. So for taller kids, taller passengers in the back, I think they're going to be fine. The only issue is there's actually no charging points to speak of here, so if you have got your devices and you want to top them up, you're going to have to ask very nicely from the people in the front. None here, and none underneath there. And then in the middle there is an armrest, but from what I can work out, that just seems to be a short iPad or tablet holder. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what use that has actually really there. Other terms of storage, small seat back pockets and some quite deep door bins actually. So a bit of a mixed bag, but spaciousness is good back here. Practicality is the name of the game with estate cars, and the C-Class Estate does deliver in that area. It's got 490 litres of space back here. It's also got a nice low load lip, so for getting bigger items in or heavy suitcases, it's going to make things a lot easier. Now it's worth pointing out that that is actually 10 litres smaller than the boot you'll get from the BMW 3 Series Touring, and if you are after a more budget friendly but more practical option, then the Skoda Octavia Estate actually offers 640 litres, so it's way bigger than the boot that you'll get here. Mercedes has followed quite a traditional format with the latest generation of C-Class, and in this C220D version we've got a turbocharged diesel engine up front, sending power to the rear wheels, producing around about 200 brake horsepower. Very traditional standard figures for a car like this, as you might expect. What isn't traditional about this car is the efficiency that it's able to deliver. Now, Mercedes has integrated a 48-volt mild hybrid system into the engine, and what that does is just make everything a tiny bit more efficient. It can store a little bit of energy from when slowing down, and it can also allow the engine to switch off and to coast when you are on the motorway or travelling at higher speeds, again, reducing that load on the engine. Short story is, Mercedes claims that you should be able to get up to 60 mpg, and actually during my time with the car, you can get well over that. And in fact, when I've brimmed this car, filled it up entirely, it's shown a range of nearly 1,000 miles, which from a relatively compact executive estate car is, well, it's downright impressive. Because after all, who is the Mercedes C-Class aimed towards? Well, it's aimed towards long distance executive drivers, people who are spending a long time on the motorway, or for families who are looking for a comfortable way of getting about that isn't going to break the bank when it comes to fuel costs. I think it absolutely appeals to both of those audiences, and everyone in between, in fairness.
simply because this car isn't going to cost a lot to run, and the CO2 emissions of just over 125 grams per kilometre mean that it's not going to cost a lot to tax or to use as a business vehicle either. Having that really long range means that you're not going to have to worry about filling up too often. Of course, this is a car that's better suited for long journeys, and if you are doing shorter trips around town, I'd still advise going for a petrol rather than a diesel, because they just like working at higher operating speeds. But if that's what you're after, then this C-Class really delivers. It's also comfortable too. This car that we've got at the moment is an entry-level sport trim, and although AMG line with its large wheels and extra trim pieces, I can certainly see the appeal in. If you want a comfortable car, this is the one to go for, because it's got smaller wheels with larger tyres, and it just makes the car a little bit better able to cope with imperfections in the road, larger potholes. Against cars like the BMW 3 Series, it's not quite as dynamic, but it counters against that with its ability to just feel really comfortable, really refined, and most importantly, very quiet. It's really quiet in here. Mercedes uses its 9-speed automatic gearbox in the latest C-Class. Actually, if you think about 20 years ago, a 9-speed automatic gearbox in a C-Class, well, you wouldn't have actually imagined it. But in this application, it's really nice and smooth. It's very intelligent when it shifts, so you're never left without power. You can take control of it via the mounted pedals on the steering wheel, but this isn't the sort of car that you're going to be shifting quickly or exploiting every bend. And the gearbox works really well, just left to its own devices. The steering is light, but it's relatively accurate, and it's about on the money for what you might expect from a car of this type in this time period. Gone are the days of communicative hydraulic systems, well, outside of cars like McLaren's, for instance. But in this application, just works perfectly fine. It's also nice and light and smooth when you're at low speed, so parking this isn't going to be an issue either. In terms of visibility, it's not too bad. The rear screen is relatively compact, but there's lots of glass put down the sides of the car, so your over-the-shoulder view isn't too interrupted. I think that's really helpful, particularly if you're on the motorway a lot, because you're going to be doing your shoulder checks quite a fair bit. In terms of performance, the C220D will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in just under 7.5 seconds. So it's got more than enough on tap for joining motorways or that roll-on performance that you might be looking for. It's about in line with all of its competitors too. And of course, in the Mercedes range, you've got the option to go for something a little bit more powerful if you do want a car with a little extra thrust, so to speak.
The latest generation of Mercedes C-Class is a really compelling package. It's practical, it's really nice inside, and it's got some of the latest technology that Mercedes has to offer too. But what really shines through, particularly on this C220D model, is just how efficient it is. And at this time, and in this time period when people are really watching their fuel bills, I think that's what makes the most impact. The good thing about the C-Class is that if you aren't looking to buy a brand new one, then there are many generations to choose from, and all of them are on Motors.co.uk at the moment. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below, and as always, remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel, hitting that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new review.